The story begins with the introduction of Lin Chen, a successful headhunting consultant in a reputable firm. She rarely socializes with other people and devotes her entire time to her work. One afternoon, Lin Chen is introduced to a new executive named Danny, who happens to be the CEO's cousin. Danny's very confident and charming, and most people admire him, but Lin Chen doesn't give him as much attention as others do. When Danny approaches her and invites her to a party that night, Lin Chen declines, saying she's not interested in parties. However, once Danny says that the CEO is considering making her a partner, she changes her mind. Later that night, when Lin Chen shows up at the corporate party, the CEO is taken aback by her presence. Danny then introduces Lin Chen to his wife Alicia. Moments later, a girl named Regina approaches Lin Chen and claims to have been her senior in high school. However, Lin says she's never seen her before and rushes towards the bathroom in a panic. When she leaves the restroom, she runs into a woman named Fang, who's the CEO of a company named Dalton. Fang extends an invitation for her to join their company, but Lin says she'll need some time to think about it. She then goes back to the party, where the CEO assigns her a challenging task. It turns out that Lin has to convince an important client named Alan, along with Danny's help. Just then, Danny grabs her waist, which makes her feel uncomfortable, so she leaves the party right away. When she gets home, she discovers that her boyfriend, Toby, has cleaned up her apartment and left her with a gift on the table. But Lin does not seem to be pleased by it and continues her work. The next morning, Danny and Lin travel to meet an important client named Alan. But when they arrive, Danny informs Lin that Alan does not like to conduct business with women and leaves her alone. While returning home, Lin notices that she's being followed by a car, and when she stops the car, she ends up getting into a rear-end car crash. Lin furiously gets out of the car to check who it is, but she's not expecting Regina to be there. She notices the bruised hands of Regina, as if she's been physically abused. When the traffic police show up, Regina apologizes to Lin Chen, saying she just wanted to talk to her about something from the past, but Lin feels annoyed by this and leaves. Lin arrives home upset, and Toby starts pressuring her about going to her hometown to celebrate her birthday, which angers her even more. Now Toby is annoyed by her cold behavior and claims that he was about to propose to her, despite knowing she wanted to end things. However, Lin simply says that she does not want to think about marriage and asks Toby to leave her alone. Moments later, Lin Chen receives a call from her boss informing her that the negotiation between Danny and Alan has failed, and he requests that she come forward to resolve the issue. The next day, she goes to Alan's favorite coffee shop and asks for a few minutes to talk about work. Alan first refuses to speak with her, but after hearing her speak Korean, he agrees to give her a chance, and she successfully persuades him to accept the deal. Meanwhile, Danny becomes envious of Lin Chen's success and begins to sexually harass her at the office. But when other employees arrive, he accuses Lin of being obsessed with him and makes a big scene. Frustrated with this, she tries to call Fang, who had earlier offered her a position. But Fang informs her that to work at Dalton, she must be a married woman. Later that night, Danny calls Lin Chen and urges her to come into the office immediately, promising to help her to get a job at Dalton. Having no other option, she goes to the office only to find it empty. Then, out of nowhere, Danny appears behind her and knocks her unconscious. Lin wakes up after a while to find herself bound with rope. Then Danny pulls out his camera and starts filming Lin being harassed. However, she manages to free the rope and sprays anti-wolf spray on his face. Danny catches her again and tries to abuse her, but she grabs a pen and stabs it into his face before running away. In a state of panic, she immediately gets into her car, trying to leave that place. Moments later, she receives a call from Fang, who informs her that her boyfriend Toby has favorably recommended her, and therefore they intend to hire her. After realizing what Toby's done for her, she thinks back to how he's helped her over the years and even gave up his job in the US to be with her. Lin feels guilty and tries to call Toby, but all of a sudden, a massive truck rushes over and slams into her car. In the next scene, Lin Chen comes to her senses, and to her surprise, she finds herself in her childhood home. She comes out of her room and sees her parents and brother. It's hard for her to believe because her brother and father died many years ago. She hugs her brother Ming and says that she had a vivid dream, but her family asks if she dreamed of a car accident again. Her parents reveal that she was in a coma for a long time after the car crashed on a rainy day. Then her father informs Lin that her phone is being serviced at a store. When she gets there, she's surprised to find that her phone is completely different, and so is her address book. Lin tries to call her boyfriend Toby, but the number does not exist. She begins to wonder if she has any other issues after the car accident, so she begins to look for answers online. When she browses through her picture gallery, she finds a picture of her with Mia and Nikki. Lin recalls certain details about them from their time in school, knowing that they were her close friends. Later, Lin goes to Toby's workplace to look for him, but discovers that he does not exist. This makes her even more shocked. She discovers that she's no longer an executive of a consulting firm, and the house she lived in is now her friend Yang's house. Lin has no idea what happened to her, but she realizes that she must accept reality and go back to her everyday life, because now she has a complete family. But for some reason, she can't figure out why she misses Hao Ming so much if he doesn't exist. A few days later, Lin Chen goes to meet her high school best friends, Mia and Nikki. They have a party at Nikki's house, and later, all three girls go to sleep. At midnight, Lin Chen senses that someone has broken into the house, but she gets scared and just pretends to sleep. The next morning, she tells her friends about the incident, and they discover that the intruder was Jung Kae, the building's security guard. When they search the house together, they unexpectedly discover a pinhole camera. Lin Chen advises her friends to report the incident to the police. When Jung Kae discovers that the police have arrived at his house, he flees in terror, causing his old grandmother to be injured and hospitalized. When the property manager apologizes to the girls, Lin Chen reads Jung Kae's confession and finds out that his family situation is not good. Concerned about his grandmother's health, she goes to the hospital to see her. When Lin comes out of the hospital, she's followed by Jung Kae. Since she called the cops on him, he pulls out a knife and threatens to attack her. But fortunately, someone intervenes and saves her just in time. But she's shocked when she sees the person who saved her is none other than her boyfriend, Toby. When Lin sees Toby, she couldn't help but hug him. Meanwhile, Jung Kae pulls out a weapon and decides to sneak attack him. But Lin pushes Toby away and ends up getting injured. Toby immediately starts chasing Jung Kae, and Lin runs after him. But while she's at it, a motorcycle almost hits her, so Toby goes to save her instead. When he says he's a cop, Lin demands to see his ID. As he hands her the ID, she finds that the man who resembles Toby is actually a police officer named Zhao. In the meantime, he gets a call and mentions a person named Sheng Hua. Lin informs them that she knows that name, as Sheng Hua used to be her senior in high school. Now the two go to eat, and Lin realizes that Zhao is completely different from Toby. Zhao is very sloppy, while Toby was very clean and organized. Zhao informs her that Sheng Hua is missing and is accused of killing her former physics teacher, Sheng, in her nursing home. Hearing the names, Lin remembers Sheng Hua clearly, but not the teacher. Zhao suspects she's mentally ill, but Lin explains that she was recently in a car accident and her memories have been mixed ever since, making it difficult for her to tell what's real and what's not. When Lin Chen gets home, she's still thinking about Sheng Hua. She goes through the photo book, but she doesn't remember anything about her teacher. The next day, she overhears her parents arguing, but when she confronts them, they claim it's nothing. Later, she remembers how she and her brother Ming used to collect strawberries as kids. She then realizes that Ming doesn't talk like before and seems quite lost and upset all the time. So Lin approaches him and tries to speak with him, but just then, the earth shakes. You get it. There's an earthquake. After the brief earthquake, Lin Chen recalls her brief interaction with a little girl named Anna in a learning center. She remembers how Anna had claimed that her parents were getting a divorce and that her father had threatened to kill her on her birthday. When Lin quickly glances at the calendar, she discovers that today is Anna's birthday. Even though she's unsure if the memory is merely a hallucination or if it actually happened, she decides to give it a shot. She rushes to Anna's house, but on the way, her bicycle breaks down. Fortunately, she runs across Zhao and asks him for a ride. When they both get to the house, they instantly notice smoke coming from it. They immediately burst down the door and quickly intervene to save the family. Later, as Zhao is washing his hands, Lin Chen notices his burnt hands and thinks about Toby. She remembers that Toby had some scars on his chest, so she asks Zhao to show his chest. But he finds this request strange and feels that she's gone too far, and even accuses her of pretending to be crazy. Later, Zhao goes to the hospital to check her medical records, only to discover that Lin was severely injured in the car accident. He begins to feel bad about his behavior. Later that night, while watching the news at home, Lin finds that a few police officers have been hurt in an accident. To make sure Zhao is okay, she immediately rushes to the hospital and is relieved when she sees him sleeping in the corridor. Moments later, Lin tries to look at the scars on his chest, but he catches her. He's aware of what she intended to do, so to make her give up, he pulls off his clothes to show his chest to her. After realizing there's nothing on his chest, she turns around and walks away. The next day, when Zhao checks a hardware store's CCTV monitoring, he discovers that Lin Chen and Sheng Hua had met a few days before the murder incident. He suspects Lin Chen is somehow connected to the murder and decides to spy on her. Meanwhile, a man named Yuang arrives at Lin's house, but she does not recognize him. Her parents tell her that she dated him in college, and that ever since they broke up, Yuang has been traveling all over the world. After that, they all go to her father's orchard, while Zhao also follows them. He wanders around the orchard for clues, but can't find anything. That evening, when Lin Chen returns home, Zhao confronts her and asks why she met Sheng Hua a few days before the murder. But Lin becomes more confused and has no recollection of meeting her. But since Zhao does not believe her this time, Lin asks him to accompany her to the hardware store to see if she can remember anything. Zhao takes Lin Chen to the hardware store, but she's unable to remember anything. He then takes her to another place that she's been to before. Lin Chen has no idea she's been there until she meets a girl named Coco, who's selling trinkets and handicrafts. Lin does not remember Coco, but the girl tells her that Lin Chen used to visit her frequently and that she had no other friends. Coco also mentions that Zhao is the first person Lin has ever brought with her. Now, both Zhao and Lin are surprised to hear this. Later that evening, Lin Chen goes to a party with her best friends and her ex-boyfriend Yuang. There, she notices Nikki flirting with her ex, which triggers her old memories. She remembers a vision in which she had sworn angrily that her best friends were hypocrites and that they have betrayed her trust. The next day, Nikki invites Wang to meet with her, and she tries to seduce him. But he refuses her advances, stating that even though he and Lin Chen are not together, he does not want to betray her trust. Then Nikki threatens him with how Lin Chen will respond if she discovers the truth, but he ignores her and walks away. In the meantime, Zhao arrives at Lin's house to deliver the key she had previously left in his car. He notices her cooking in the kitchen and sees that she isn't very good at it. So he takes the initiative to prepare a pot of porridge. As they eat, Lin Chen asks him about the case, and he advises her to think about it calmly. Zhao asks her to tell him whatever unimportant things come to her mind, because these could be the key to solving the case. Because of these words, Lin Chen remembers the car that was scrapped during the accident. Then she goes to the car factory to inquire about the situation and see what remains of her car. The owner of the factory hands her the contents of the car, among which she discovers a business card of Sheng Hua with a phone number on it. She then instantly dials the number, but it goes unanswered. In search of clues, Lin Chen goes to the nursing home where Sheng Hua used to work. She asks the workers if they've seen her before, but they all say they haven't. As Lin wanders around the nursing home, she recalls a vision where she is arguing with Sheng Hua in the car, saying that she will kill Miss Patty soon. She becomes terrified, and assuming Sheng Hua is the killer, Lin texts her ex-boyfriend Wang and asks him about what kind of a relationship she had with Sheng Hua. In the meantime, Zhao invites Mrs. Patty to the police station to better understand the situation. She's anxious and has trouble drinking water, which makes him think she's suspicious. Later, Patty goes to worship her late husband, but on the way, she meets a neighbor who expresses her sympathies. She accidentally finds out from the neighbor that Mr. Chen, Lin's father, frequently used to inquire about her husband's death, which makes her feel even more scared. A while later, Mrs. Patty calls Lin Chen and asks why she called earlier. When Lin informs her that she found the number on Sheng Hua's card, Patty invites her to come over and says that she needs to discuss something important. When Lin Chen visits Mrs. Patty's residence, she recalls some hazy memories. Patty tells her that they used to be very close and asks whether she recalls anything from the past, but Lin Chen claims she doesn't. Patty declares that she needs to confess something and asks her not to tell anyone, not even her parents. She then says that Sheng Hua used to come to their house for free tuition, as she was an orphan and was very poor. However, her feelings for Mr. Patty were abnormal, so she seduced him and was his mistress for many years. Lin Chen finds it difficult to accept it, but Mrs. Patty goes on to claim that Sheng Hua might have also seduced her father, Mr. Chen, and hence she suspects that he might be hiding and protecting her. Mrs. Patty urges Lin to investigate the situation more so that they can find Sheng Hua as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Zhao is also suspicious of Mr. Chen, so he goes to the orchard in the middle of the night to look for some clues. There, he finds the same black dust discovered on the window of the crime scene. On the other hand, Lin has a suspicion of her father as well, so she goes to the orchard to find a floor plan of a nursing home, which makes her even more concerned. While investigating, she and Zhao run into each other, which shocks both of them. As they're leaving, Lin suddenly remembers something, and her head hurts, Seeing that she's not in the right condition, Zhao gives her a ride home to prevent her from having another accident. In the next scene, Mrs. Chen discovers that her husband has lately purchased some women's products, so she hides in his truck to watch where he goes. As she follows him, she finds out that her husband has been secretly hiding Shenghua the entire time. Shenghua says she'll turn herself in, but Mr. Chen argues she shouldn't because she hasn't done anything wrong. While the couple continues to argue, Shenghua walks away, and Mr. Chen follows her. The following night, Zhao runs across Ming on his way back from the pharmacy. When he asks Ming where he's coming from, he panics and runs away. While following him, Zhao runs into Lin and nearly shoots her. After a brief argument, Lin leaves the scene and Zhao heads in the direction of Ming, where he comes across the house that Mr. Chen had arranged for Shenghua. As he checks the situation, Mr. Chen knocks him up from behind and ties him up. Moments later, Zhao wakes up and tries to persuade Mr. Chen to let him go, but things get heated and Chen ends up shooting him in the arm. Seeing her mother upset, Lin calls her father to find out what happened, but he tells her it's nothing and urges her not to worry. Then we see Mr. Chen treating Zhao's wound. When he inquires about the truth, Mr. Chen responds that he'll surrender and expose the truth when the time comes. Meanwhile, Nikki is preparing for a concert when she meets Guan, a son of a wealthy man. She joyfully provides a VIP suite for him, and they later become intimate with each other. However, when she checks his phone later, Nikki discovers that he'd sent their intimate video to his friends. She becomes enraged seeing this and immediately asks him to erase the video and threatens to sue him. When Nikki arrives at her office, she finds out that her intimate video has been leaked. She panics and returns home and shuts herself in. After hearing the news, Mia comes to support her, and in a few moments, Lin Chen also shows up. But when Nikki sees her, she becomes enraged and claims that Lin Chen has come to humiliate her, since something similar happened to her in the past. But because Lin Chen has no recollection of the past, she becomes confused and has no idea what Nikki's trying to say. Lin goes to her house and asks her mother and brother for the truth, but they don't tell her anything. They begin to argue, and when her mother tries to say something, Ming intervenes and prevents her from speaking. Just then, in the heat of the event, Lin Chen loses consciousness, and in turn, she suddenly recalls everything. We're taken back to a flashback of when Lin Chen used to be a teenager. She's in middle school and frequently goes to Mr. Patty's residence with her friends for tutoring. Mr. Patty also looks after Shenghua's education because she lives alone with her grandma and comes from a poor family. Since Lin is a good student, Mr. Patty asks her to come to his house to study more than the others, to which she agrees. Her parents are also quite fond of Mr. and Mrs. Patty, and they're happy that their daughter's in good hands. One day, Mr. Patty makes an excuse to call Lin Chen to collect the test papers, and then he starts hugging her tightly. She claims that because he does not have any children, he considers her to be his daughter, which is why he hugged her. And since that day, Lin Chen feels uncomfortable with him and avoids going to his house to study. But her parents, who are completely unaware of this, keep urging her to go to the teacher's house so she can study well. Next, Lin Chen goes to tutoring, and it happens to be a rainy day. Mr. Patty invites her in and offers her some clothing to change into. But moments later, he loses control of his emotions and forces himself onto her. After a while, Mrs. Patty arrives at the scene, but despite witnessing her husband molesting an innocent girl, she shows no reaction and closes the door. Back in the present, Lin Chen finally remembers what actually happened and finds it difficult to confront it, so she's hesitant to speak after waking up. Seeing her in pain, her mother rushes to confront Mrs. Patty and scolds her for approaching Lin again. However, Mrs. Patty blames Lin and Shenghua for wrecking her marriage, which disgusts Mrs. Chen even more. She then expresses regret for sending her daughter to their house to study and for failing to protect her. And before leaving, she threatens Mrs. Patty to never contact Lin ever again, or else she'll get the police involved. In the meantime, Zhao realizes that Mr. Chen is sleeping and tries to run away from the captivity. Mr. Chen also wakes up and follows him, but suddenly, a car comes up and hits Zhao. In the next scene, a teenage Lin Chen is shown to be washing herself countless times after the abuse she had to go through. She has no idea how to deal with it all, and she's always disoriented. When her mother asks her to go to tutoring one day, she eventually snaps and tells her the truth. Her mother then tells her father about the incident, who's shocked, but instead of supporting her, he blames Lin for not pushing Mr. Patty away and not fighting back. Lin is disgusted that her own family blames her for this, so she runs outside and meets Shenghua. and it turns out that Shenghua is also a victim of Mr. Patty's abuse. Later, Mr. and Mrs. Patty arrive at the house, accompanied by a member of the school board. Her parents threaten to call the police, but Mrs. Patty claims that it's their daughter's fault because none of the other students have come forward like this. Despite her husband's atrocities, she continues to protect him and refuses to admit that he abused anyone. The school board also begs Lin Chen's parents to handle the issue internally without raising a fuss, as doing so could harm their school's reputation. In school, Lin is withdrawn herself and is constantly lost and disoriented. When the suffering eventually becomes too much to bear, she confides in her best friend Mia and urges her not to tell anyone. Mia sympathizes with her and provides all of the support she needs, but she ends up telling Nikki about the incident. But one day, when Nikki overhears some girls talking negatively about Lin, she unintentionally leaks the truth, causing a controversy in the school. As a result, Lin Chen is taken before the school's administration, and her father is also contacted. However, she was forced to deny the rumors to uphold their reputation. And since then, Lin has refused to speak with her friends as she can't forgive them for betraying her trust. In the present, after being hit by a truck, Zhao is rushed to the hospital. He does not reveal the fact that he was kidnapped by Mr. Chen and lets him go after discovering the truth about Mr. Patty. At the same time, he realizes that neither Mr. Chen nor Shenghua killed Mr. Patty, so he assumes Lin is engaged in the murder. Just then, he receives a phone call from the police station informing him that Shenghua has turned herself in, confessing to the murder of Mr. Patty. Meanwhile, Mrs. Patty also arrives at the police station, and she's worried that her husband's past deeds would be revealed. So she keeps telling the cops that Shenghua might lie to justify the murder and asks them not to believe her. Later, Zhao approaches Shenghua and asks how she committed the murder, but Shenghua doesn't give much of an explanation. She simply says that she gave him a bunch of sleeping pills, causing him to die of an overdose. However, Mr. Patty was strangled to death, so Zhao finds it difficult to accept that Shenghua killed him. Later, Lin Chen goes to the police station to meet Shenghua, who apologizes to her for not speaking up against Mr. Patty's assaults back then. Soon after that, Lin Chen receives a message from her brother, Ming, saying he will avenge her. After Lin Chen leaves, Zhao encourages Shenghua to disclose the truth, but Shenghua remains adamant that she is the murderer. He then claims to know that since Shenghua lived with the Chen family for a year, and because she has a strong relationship with them, she's now defending the Chen family. It turns out that Shenghua had meant to overdose Mr. Patty with sleeping pills, but just then, Mr. Chen arrives to kill him. However, she persuades him not to do anything stupid and helps him to escape through the window. But Ming appears in the meantime and strangles Mr. Patty to death. Meanwhile, Ming is now plotting to murder Mrs. Patty and has broken into her home. But Mrs. Patty realizes that Ming has barged into her home. To defend herself, she grabs a knife and even manages to injure him. She then calls Lin and requests that she arrive quickly. Following the interrogation, Zhao calls Lin and learns that she's going to Mrs. Patty's house, so he also heads there. Moments later, when Lin shows up at the house, she's shocked to see her injured brother. Mrs. Patty jumps to attack Lin as well, but Zhao arrives just in time to save her. She then injures Zhao, but he manages to hold her and tells Lin to run away. As she leaves the house, Lin realizes that nothing makes sense and her thoughts become diluted once again. In the following scene, Lin Chen awakens at the police station where she was trying to file a report, but she's surprised to be returning to the world where she's a successful headhunter consultant. She learns from the police that she was hit by a heavy truck while coming back from the workplace. Her previous reality has been only an illusion. After finishing the record, she comes out of the police station to meet her boyfriend Toby. At first, she thinks it might be Zhao, but she breathes a sigh of relief when she realizes that the person in front of her is actually her boyfriend. Toby reminds her that she's been calling him Zhao for the past 2 days. Lin Chen has no idea what happened to her, but she accepts this is her true reality. Next, Lin Chen receives a call from her boss to talk about Danny's situation. Danny had wrongly accused her of enticing and assaulting him in the office. Lin Chen and Toby go to the office to try to resolve the matter, but the CEO only believes Danny's words and orders her to quit the company. After Lin packs her belongings and walks downstairs, Toby says he wants to help her and that they will sue Danny for the misconduct, but she behaves distantly with him again and asks him to leave, which leaves him confused. Toby's frightened of losing her and wants to help her, but he's not sure how. Just then, Lin's ex-boyfriend, Yuang, calls him and asks him to read her diary and find out everything about what happened in the past. After reading the diary, Toby realizes that Lin has been sexually abused in the past and she frequently experiences dissociation as a result of this trauma. Yuang has devised numerous methods to help her in escaping the shadow of her past, but they were all unsuccessful. Lynn remained where she was, and he couldn't take it any longer and ended their relationship. After discovering the truth, Toby calls Lynn and requests to meet with her, but she refuses once again. Next, Lynn realizes that when Danny tried to abuse her, it brought back unpleasant memories for her. So she had to avenge the man who made her relive the event that ruined her life. Lynn knows that Shenghua is now Danny's wife, whom she had met at a party. Lynn previously decided to avoid Shenghua because she wanted to put the past behind her. But now that she's assessed the situation and is aware that the two of them may work together to defeat a man like Danny, she decides to approach her. The next day, she meets Shenghua and discusses what Danny has done to her. However, Shenghua tries to reason with her and attempts to justify Danny's actions. She believes Danny cannot accept powerful women because his mother was an assertive lady who dominated him his entire life. He expects the women around him to regard him as superior. On the other hand, Lin states that his childhood trauma should not affect the lives of the women who are around him, and there can be no explanation for his actions. Lin asks Shenghua to find the camera Danny used to film the incident. After her chat with Lin Chen, Shenghua realizes that she's been living a submissive life even as an adult. She realizes she's in the same situation as Patty's wife, and as a result, she risks being caught and finds the memory card used in the camera and hands it over to Lin. Later, Danny's arrested after Lin and Shenghua make a report against him and submit the video. In the next scene, Lin Chen reconnects with her mother. She realizes how she decided to isolate herself from her family after high school. Lin could no longer live with her father, who silenced his daughter when she needed his help the most. Her mother informs her that even though he ordered her not to tell Lin about his declining health, he would frequently whisper her name in his sleep. And her brother, Ming, died in an accident not long after her father died. Later, Shenghua meets Lin and informs her that she's divorced Danny and is going to the south to start a new life. Lin tells her to stay in touch with her so they can work on leading healthier lives in the future. Following that, Lin Chen visits a psychiatrist to address her past trauma, while Toby enrolls in a course to better understand the inner suffering of women who have experienced sexual assault. He wants to learn how to guide people out of their troubled pasts so that he can support Lin with her trauma. Now, Lin Chen reconciles with her old friends and forgives them. By revisiting her memories, she finds that they were naive teenagers who shared her secret with the rest of the school. She forgives them and decides to rekindle their friendship. In the next scene, we see that Mr. Patty is still alive. He's now paralyzed and uses a wheelchair. His wife sometimes wishes she could choke him to death, recalling the kind of person he was. But she's obligated to look after him, even though he's the cause of all of her suffering. In the final scene, Lin Chen and Toby go camping together. She tells them that even though he's important to her, she can't accept his feelings and returns the ring to him. However, Toby says that he'll not force her to do anything and that he'll stay with her to support her no matter what. Lin feels moved by his words, and she finally convinces herself to accept his love. She promises to find a way to let go of the past and start her life again, and the story comes to an end.